Welcome to the American Spaces Zambia virtual program. My name is Justin Mulenga. I'm the American Center Assistant here at the U.S. Embassy in Zambia. Today we are privileged to host Abigail Nedziwe. She is the 2016 Mandela Washington Fellow and also children and the women rights advocate. So she will help us understand how we can take actions against domestic abuse. So please allow me to join Abigail as we continue with the discussion. Hi, Abigail.
Good morning, Justin.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to host you on this forum today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so Abigail, can you please introduce yourself further so that the participants can know who we are talking to today?
Okay. Thank you so much, Justin. My name, as you earlier said, is Abigail Nedziwe. I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow for 2016. I'm currently working with the government. A child development officer under the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Child Development here in Southern Province. And currently, the chairperson for the anti-GBV task force for Southern Province. Thank you so much.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, so as we continue to discuss this topic we have today, could you please help us understand if there is any difference between gender-based violence and domestic gender-based violence?
Okay. So if you look at gender-based violence, it's broad. So domestic, I would say the difference is in the sense that domestic violence is a type of gender-based violence. It falls under gender-based violence. So under gender-based violence, you'll find there's domestic violence, there's child abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's child neglect, there's issues of intimate partner violence, which also falls sometimes under domestic violence. So really the difference between domestic violence and gender-based violence is that domestic violence falls under one of the types of gender-based violence.
Are the most vulnerable to the domestic gender-based violence?
Okay, according to our experiences and mostly what's been reported, we've seen that there's a trend in women and girls being the most vulnerable to domestic violence. You find that these are the ones that are most prone to domestic violence. In some cases, it's issues of poverty and the dependency syndrome of women who most times depend on men to provide for them in every aspect, financially, in their homes. So you find that most of these women or young children are prone to domestic violence.
Some of the factors that leads to domestic gender violence.
Like I earlier alluded to just now, Justin, you look at issues of poverty and the dependency syndrome of our women, issues of inequality, and also issues of our culture and how most times women or in these families, they will look at domestic violence as something that should be dealt with within a family. It should not involve the police or any other interference because maybe of some of our cultural beliefs, not only here in Zambia, but also across Africa, we've had these issues where people would rather deal with issues of domestic and gender-based violence internally, which is what has sort of made us lag behind in the fight against gender-based violence.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So we've seen a trend where some cases, domestic violence cases being withdrawn from police. So why is it that these cases mostly are being withdrawn and survivors opt to stay within abusive relationships?
Okay, I think it also goes back to us, the stakeholders that are dealing with issues of gender-based violence. We are not looking at these issues with a holistic approach. What I'm trying to say is when a woman or a girl child reports an issue of gender-based violence, we are supposed to get to the root cause. The issues of, there could be issues of the economy. Maybe they need economic strengthening. They don't have a source of income. We need to look at the health aspect of this survivor of GBV. We need to look at, it's a child, the education aspect of this child. Once you get that child out of that home where that child is being abused, what are you going to do next? Are you going to support this child to get an education, or do they still have to go back to that abusive home in order for them to be supported to get their education? How are we supporting these survivors of domestic violence? So I think we need to look at the approach and provide a more holistic approach. Are we going to provide economic strengthening to this vulnerable woman that's being battered in a home, that has no income? How are we going to help this woman in order for her to be independent and be able to provide for herself? I think those are some of the issues. This is why we have survivors of domestic violence still going back to their homes because they depend on their husbands to provide for them, to pay for the children's school fees. So once they know that the husband is going to be reported at the police, or if they report at the police, this husband is going to be sent to prison, they know that they're going to suffer because they have no other source of income. This is a person that they depend on.
So what are some of the challenges that you activists of gender-based violence face in the fight, in the fight, yes, especially during this time of COVID-19?
Okay. If you actually pay attention to the statistics, I think we've had a higher number of domestic violence during this COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't know if we would point it to the fact that families had more time at home together during the pandemic, or it's now a trend where now these people are more vulnerable because they're spending more time with the perpetrators. And what has made this difficult is that most people have been unable to report cases of GBV during this pandemic in their homes regarding issues of domestic violence.
In addition to what you've just mentioned, do we have any other strategies that can be applied to keep this domestic violence phenomenon effectively and efficiently?
I think I'll still go back to the issue of not working in silos and really coordinating our different activities, because there's so much that is happening regarding these issues of gender-based violence, domestic violence, child neglect. There's so much that is going on around, and people are working in these particular areas and providing different services. But what we are lacking is that coordination aspect and bringing our work together in order for us to provide better help to our survivors of GBV.
So Abigail, if one is found in a domestic violence situation, where can they go and what can they do?
I think first things first, Justin, if you are found in a case of domestic violence, be it physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, something that is threatening your life, I think the first place that you need to be going to is the police. We have the victim support unit at the police. I think you go through that channel, you report to the victim support unit, then they'll guide you, you go to the hospital. And this is why now we have what we are calling one-stop centers, where you have the police sitting there and there are counselors there as well. And there's a hospital there, because these are located right within the hospital area. So even as we are going out there with a message as gender activists and people that are involved in the fight against domestic violence and gender-based violence, let's bring out this message clearly on where these people should go to report these cases of gender-based violence and the sort of help that they'll get. Before, we had people shunning away, saying when they go to the police station, they're not treated in a certain way. We are moving out of that sort of scenario where people feel uncomfortable to report issues of GBV at the police. I think we're working very well with the victim support unit, hence our bringing them on board to understand how these people must be treated. And then we have a number of programs that are coming up in terms of capacity building, the victim support unit, and how they should handle survivors of domestic violence and gender-based violence as a whole. So if you're found in a situation of domestic violence, please go to the police. That is life-threatening.
Okay, that's nice. So, Abigail, so do we have selected police stations where there is one-stop centers, or nearly all the police stations have got one-stop centers?
So what's happening now, the one-stop centers are not sitting at the police, but at the hospital. Yes, this is to avoid those movements between the police and the hospital, because along the way, if you find that there's a distance between the police and the hospital, sometimes people change their minds to actually pursue the issue further. So what we are advocating for now, it's not all the districts here in Southern Province that have one-stop centers, but I think by next year, we'll have almost all the district health facilities having a one-stop center. There's a program that we are working on as a government in partnership with UNDP to make sure that we have these one-stop centers sitting in these places so that people can get the help that they need in one place.
Thank you so much for taking your time to share this helpful and eye-opening practices to stop GBV in our communities. Do you have any last remarks or comments as we come to the conclusion?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for this opportunity, Justin. And I'll still echo my sentiments to say, if you're involved in a case of gender-based violence, please don't stay back until it becomes worse or you're found in a place where you are helpless. I think let's report these issues of domestic violence, issues of physical abuse, intimate partner violence. These are things that are happening not only to women in the rural areas, but also women in urban areas, and girls in urban areas, as well as girls in rural areas. So let's report these cases. There's help. There are people that will be there to help you in different ways. Is it health? Is it education? Is it economic strengthening? I think we are working towards that direction where we give that help to everybody. So please, let's report these cases of GBV.
Okay, thank you so much once again, Abigail.